let's start this way. Some people here know me already. Know me in whichever way they think I am. And there are some people who are seeing me for the first time. So it must be clear to you that I'm neither having a weird dress or a weird hairdo or rudrakshas on my neck. I like rudraksha, but right now, and or anything of that kind. I look like you. I'm wearing a pair of pants, which is easy to wear, jeans, and a shirt and a sweater, a sweatshirt, and that's it. Like you. So when Devanik says, my guru and all that, you must be wondering, so what's so special about this guy, He looks like anybody else, so. I like to be like anybody else, of course. But something has happened to me which is internal. And because of that, even though I live in this world like everybody else, some part of me is not here. It's not as if you, like people say, this guy is crazy, he's not here. Not that way. But there is one part of me which is outside the understanding of the senses. I think that I have touched something which cannot be described or understood by our ordinary mind. Everybody else I know, I also have an ordinary mind. I think using our sense organs and our intellectual faculties, we can only go up to this understanding that perhaps there is something which cannot be grasped by our ordinary reasoning faculties. It's not because we have not been equipped. I think we are equipped, but the faculties that we normally use are not enough to find this out. We have our five senses, and we have our mind or the brain, whatever you want to call it, which forms ideas and conclusions based on what you see, what you hear, the five senses. So our inputs are only limited to these five senses. Like we see with our eyes, we hear with our ears, we smell with our nose, we touch with our hands, the skin, and we taste with our tongues. These are the only instruments of perception that we have, as it is. And based on that, we form our own intellectual blueprint. But the inputs are only these. It is based on this that we make our design. Yes, I know. This is what it is. We are saying, and it is my experience, that apart from these five sensory inputs, instruments of perception, there are other instruments of perception in the human system. It's not that only few people have these, but they are latent, have not been activated. In fact, I have some very good friends who are neurologists, and one of them says that the human body, or the human system, not body only, is wired for a spiritual experience. Which means what is required is there, but in many people it's not active. In some, it becomes active. So the whole process, what has happened to me is that, well, I did go to the Himalayas, spend some time in solitude and all that, like the conventional things that happen normally. But I think that period is required, because you need some kind of solitude to be able to go deep into these matters. I'm not saying we should all go to the Himalayas, In the United States, there are a lot of places where you can actually be in solitude. At least the neighbors don't want to know what we are doing. Yeah, so that I did go through. But once I touched that, which is like activating those instruments of perception which are normally not active in most people, but are present. I touched upon something which I think is quite extraordinary. And if I touched on it, I think everybody can touch on it. Each person's pace, PACE, may be different. But there is a possibility that if the whole system is already wired for it, it's possible that we can find out the switch. So having touched it and seen that once you touch it, you move out from a very narrow circuit of being only self for self, this little thing you have, and see the whole world as part of the same thing, then I decided, well, I not decided, I wanted to be happily settled in that, but my teacher was an unknown person, no banners, no advertisements, no internet, at least we have internet, and no advertisement. A man who didn't even have footwear. Even in Gangotri I have seen him without footwear. Nothing. It was his express command that don't be funny. If you touch something, why don't you go and say about it? I said, if I talk about it, since I don't have the usual paraphernalia, if I wear a robe and I'm wearing it, then you'd all say, okay, Swamiji, and listen. There is no paraphernalia. So therefore, I said, I might be ridiculed if I go and talk. Either they would say, what is this guy talking? He's not qualified for it. Or they would say, he's a little bit gone. I said, so why don't you leave me? He said, no. I thought I was trying to make you bigger, and your heart bigger. It seems it has become very small, so get out and do it, no matter what happens. So from that time I started slowly meeting people, talking about it. And then I did something which maybe I shouldn't have done. I wrote an autobiography. And once I wrote the autobiography, my solitude was completely gone. That's why I told you that even though in the middle of all this, there is one part of me which is in solitude. And after activity, I like to retire back into solitude. But the external peace, the solitude which I had, was gone because the circus started after that. So it's going on. But I'm very careful that the circus doesn't become like Ram, Rahim and so on. So, this is where we stand right now. So, having touched something and found it precious, I thought it's a good idea to share it with others. And therefore I'm here. And whenever I go, even if there are two people, I won't mind sharing what I have in my own way, which is absolutely direct, and there are no fancy trimmings, let's put it that way. So here I am. And don't think that this might be just a freak state which has come to somebody. If it is a freak, if I'm a freak, then there's no point in teaching. You can't be a freak, you have to be normal. So I don't think so, because before I became like this, I was normal like anybody else. So something has triggered off this. One thing. Second is, there are instances of people who are absolutely normal, who even have not had spiritual training, suddenly come upon this in some way. They may not be able to formulate it and say what it is, but there are instances. It's not that there aren't. I would recommend Why I'm saying this is, some time back I said that when you go deep in and touch the core of your consciousness, you find that you are not limited only to this body, but there's something more to it. Now this is, you might think this is because I have gone through some, yeah, that's true for me. But I'm going to tell you that there are instances where this has happened to others who have not even been through all this practice. Instance, I would recommend that you read a book called, not my book, so I'm not advertising, called The Stroke of Insight by Jill Baltz. Jill Baltz, I think it's Jill. Jill Baltz was, I think she was,
Scientist, I think.
uh,
She was a scientist at a...
I think she was a pathologist, if I'm not mistaken, and she had a condition in her. You know, some people come with a certain structure in the arteries which is likely to burst. So she had that. You know that. You must be knowing that. And yeah, so in her case, the artery suddenly burst. She was very young, and bleeding, there was a lot of bleeding in the brain inside. As the bleeding started and filled the left hemisphere, the left side of her brain was completely kind of immobilized. She had a stroke, and this whole, it failed. I mean, it started failing. Now, according to latest neurological studies, although we have both sides of the brain, the left brain and right brain are slightly different in their functions. And now the left brain is the practical brain. It's that which adds plus two. It says, I am sitting here, you are sitting here, so we are different. You know, like space. Between you and me there is space. And you are there and I am here, and so on. So the space and all these things are measured by the left side, the practical side. And the right side is the intuitive brain, which doesn't calculate and say, I'm here, you're there. It is something else, it's function. What happened to Jill was, when the left side got paralyzed, and luckily she recovered, because in the state when she knew that she's going to go off, she somehow managed to phone for emergency. So she was taken away. But when she recovered, she wrote this book. She called it My Stroke of Insight. Because when the left was totally paralyzed for a while, and as she was recovering, only the right was working, she found something extraordinary, because she has not read Vedanta or anything of that kind. The extraordinary thing which she saw was that while she was sitting here, and when the birds were singing on the tree, it's not the birds she was singing. I mean, I don't know how to put that. When the leaves were moving in the gentle breeze, she was moving, not just the leaves. I mean, her idea of herself being a limited space in space and time individual, confined only to this body and maybe as much as you can stretch your hand, disappeared, and she found that her consciousness was not centered just here but everywhere. Now this is what Vedanta is talking about when it says that in essence there is the all-pervading consciousness, and that it functions through different centers, and when these centers become more and more unselfish, quiet and meditative, then you begin to understand that it's this all, Upanishad calls it Isha Vashyamidam Sarvam, that supreme reality pervades everything here. But it functions through different people. Now this is not a neurological, I'm just giving an example to show that it happened to other people also. It's not as if we did something and went crazy and so we feel it. So what did I say?
Isham, yes.
No, before that.
It doesn't have to happen.
This happens here also, not just.
No, there was some important point I was going into, but then suddenly I felt the breeze was not blowing, but I was blowing.
You made a quote from Isham, the first shloka.
Anybody?
How she felt one with the.
This,
Yes. So this lady, without studying Vedanta, suddenly felt this. Of course, it gradually subsided because soon her left side came back. And she had no training or to shift. Now, I'm not saying that we should all have a stroke. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, therefore, in yoga, there are procedures by which the left and the right brain can be alternately used or shut up. So the yogic anatomy and physiology, which is very close to our normal anatomy and physiology, but little different because it talks about energy channels. So in this, there is the left side called the Ida, the right side called the Pingala, and the central one called the Shushumna. So, plus, we should remember that human beings today use 10% of their brain. What we have today is what one might call a frontal lobe civilization. This one has developed a lot. Now what has happened? Because of that, it's a lopsided development. There are others which have been completely neglected. And also the reptilian brain, which is at the back, human beings wanting to advance and look civilized have neglected the instincts of the reptilian brain. Yeah, okay. But there are other things in the reptilian brain other than defense, attack, reaction, and so on, which have been also neglected along with that, washed out. So we are left today with a brain which reasons, wills, but has no intuition. Like before a storm comes, dogs, other animals feel it because their other brain is still on. Well, they also, if you irritate them, bite. So in the process of getting rid of that biting tendencies, we have also got rid of the other, somewhere in our progress, in our evolution. But unfortunately, I don't think we are really evolved or civilized that much. The facade has improved. The shoes shine, but the leather is not improved, the quality. In the olden days, the caveman dwelt in caves, right? And today we dwell in man-made caves. I mean, they may be flat, but it's the same thing. Okay. The floor was a rough granite. Today, especially in India, everybody uses polished granite. So what I'm trying to say, the facade has been nicely polished. We have learned to smile even when you are thinking, better this guy goes to hell. But deep down, sometimes we need to think if we have really evolved. So all I'm trying to say is that it's not as complicated as one thinks. These are all very simple affairs, and we need to understand that things change. That was possible to go deep inside and discover this for oneself, and that you don't have to be a monk to do that, or a cave dweller to do that. I think you can live in this world and yet be free. I'm there. I'm a married man, I have a wife, one wife, and I have because when okay. Let her come. The early days when they wrote a small book, they used to write introduction about me. They say, A.M. is married with one wife and two children. I said, I think they thought I might have two or three. But so here I am. So sorry, we were having a little discussion. So I've been discussing something for about 10-15 minutes, and so I rest my case. They came, what's your name, sir?
Peter.
Peter. You said?
Dana.
So I won't go through the intro. Do I have to go through it for you? Or maybe when somebody wants to ask me something, then we can touch what we discussed, maybe, perhaps. So now I leave it open. I'm in the witness box. Is there something you'd like to clarify from what I said? Or where do we proceed from here?
I walked in when you were talking about how you reached a certain level of consciousness, and went on to talk about how you discovered that, and as certain other people have discovered that there's way more potential in your brain, and that.
Let's say mind, okay. Anyway,
sorry,
it's
but I mean, what I was trying to get at is I recognize some of the things that we're talking about is our own brain and the workings of it, which we're not fully conscious about. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah. Are you a neurologist by any chance? No. Okay.
No, but
okay.
there's a lot more to it. You talked about left side, right side, connecting the two, upper brain, lower brain, and all of that. And how some of this awareness makes you then connect with the outside world and the energies that are in the environment, in the universe, and how you feel in oneness with it, or one with it.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel also that some of this awareness of self and surroundings also involves awareness of us as a group, or does Vedanta only talk about the person and the environment, or do you also then, is there some part of it that also then talks about connections with people, like,
right, I understand.
or empathy, or just I don't know if I'm making myself.
I got it. Kind of. So I know what you're saying, because we were talking about somebody who was not a yogi or a religious person in the normal sense of the term, actually a pathologist, a lady who had an experience when she had a brain stroke. And the left side of her brain was paralyzed and the right side was working, but she didn't die, she revived. And when she revived, she wrote something. It's a beautiful book called My Stroke of Insight by Jill Balls. So she said that when this side was not working and only this side had taken over, her intuition increased and her mathematical calculation reduced. So her idea about my space being just confined to the body vanished, and instead she felt that entire nature, including the birds, everything was part of her, or she was part of the whole thing. So this is where the question comes from. She says, is it only to deal with the outside world, like, I won't say inanimate, because birds, flowers, trees, they're all animate. Maybe not like us in our mode, but they're very living. You're asking, is that also applied to humans? Or, yeah? I got what you're saying. So yes, in fact, Vedanta, people have a feeling that Vedanta, generally it is understood that it's an otherworldly philosophy, or it says that this world is an illusion and there is only the Brahman and so on. This is only part of Vedanta, it's not the whole thing. Now, the whole thing about understanding of Vedanta is that when one has discovered that when the mind is quiet and is not craving for anything, not permanently, but when it has understood that relaxation comes when there is no conflict in the mind, when everything is quiet. When this happens, one touches the core of one's consciousness and then discovers that actually there is an all-pervading consciousness which is functioning through different centers. You, me. Now, anybody who discovers that cannot remain isolated from humanity. It's not possible. Because you and I, if we are one, how do I not be concerned about you? It's not possible. All great Vedantists have been very concerned about others. You see, two things happen. One, the good thing that happens is your joy also becomes my joy. Now the corollary to this, which is the other side, is your pain becomes my pain. But the good thing is, then I want to quickly get rid of your pain because then I am not in pain. Yeah. So it's not as if it's just to do with the outside world. There is no outside world from our point of view. We have divided the inside world and the outside world. There's only one. We like to divide for functioning. I mean, it's fair enough because otherwise we can't function. True. But in the essential, in the essence of it, when you go deep down, it's just one. And working through different vortex, different centers, you can conceive of it as an energy which has many vortexes working in different centers. Now, a vortex is something that moves, right? Rotates. Anything that rotates is called a chakra in Sanskrit. So, it means that there are centers in the human system and equivalent centers. If I have, then you have too. Whether it's activated in you or not, that's a different question. So like what I said in the beginning, it's a very important neurologist, many neurologists today have started saying that the human system is wired for spiritual experience. So that wiring is there. If the wiring was not there, we would never have touched, we couldn't have. It's there. But now, here is the corollary to this. If in the essential experience I feel that you and I are of the same essence, we're not the same physics, okay, of the same essence, what does it imply? It also implies that then if I had such an experience, I live in a way where I feel that your problems are also my problems and therefore I don't neglect you. Now, the other side, not flip side, not the right expression, the other side is, therefore, to lead a life which leads to this, if you have not already touched it, you have to behave like someone who has touched it and say that, I don't hate anybody, they're mine. This is where our morality comes from. When, there was we used to have yogis in India, and there were the Buddhists and so on. But there was one yogi I call the person a yogi who walked on the streets of Jerusalem one day, once upon a time. I'm not talking about the church, I'm talking about somebody. And he was what you might call a wandering person, like a homeless. Today you would say he was homeless because the words in the New Testament, I'm not a Christian preacher, the New Testament is the snakes have holes and the foxes have dens, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Which means what? The Gita describes this kind of person as aniketa, one who has no niket, was no. Every place is his home, or rather, there is no home. Both are the same. In some way, I feel like that because every night I'm sleeping in some other place. Today I'm here too, and in the night I get up. I don't know which direction the bathroom is. See, so anyway, that's a different matter. So here was a person, and some of the things said by him indicate that here is another person. So this is not confined to one geographical location. This is what I'm trying to say. Here is a person who talks almost the same language, who says, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. Who also says, lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. Also says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Not blessed are the Jews or the Christians or anybody. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children. So peacemaking, to remain peaceful in the outside world, is conducive to finding peace inside. Although, for any outside reform, I think the mind has to change first. Otherwise, you can have a reform by pressure or through rules and regulations, but it's not genuine. Genuine peace happens when I change. I have peace inside. Naturally, there is peace outside. So this is important. So all I'm saying is the whole teaching of Vedanta is look within and figure out that there is in you a spark of the all-pervading divine. Okay, now if I have found it, suppose, speculatively, if I have found it, then I would also recognize it in others, even if that person hasn't recognized it. Somebody's coming. What's your name?
My name is Priyanka.
You? Yes.
Avneet.
Have we met before? No.
Not to my
Oh.
cerebral knowledge.
Navneet.
Avneet.
Avneet. So, anything? I've seen young people here. Ah, yes.
What happens after that?
I think we should take care of what happens now when we are alive. Not what happens after death. If you understand fully what we are when you are alive, then what happens after death will speak for itself. Otherwise, we can speculate, of course. We can speculate, but my speculation is no better than yours, and yours is no better than mine. We are saying that if we find out what we are now, then we know what is going to be after death. And let me tell you, I'm not avoiding the subject, since we are on the subject, is death only when in the end we are buried in the ground, or is death also something that takes place every day?
What takes place every day? I mean, I'm only saying what I read. But
Yeah. No, but see, it's like this. It's simple. It's actually so. I'll tell you why. Every day, millions of cells in our human body are being replaced. They're dying. New ones are coming. We like to think it is the same, but no, it's gone. We have new. And in our life, every stage of our life, we are a new incarnation. When you were a child, you were something else. When you grew up a little, you were something else. Then you had some experiences in life and you became a bitter person. Some became a better person, some became bitter person. So every time there is one part of our personality dying and something else is coming up. Although we like to think that we are the same, a core. Okay. The other is, the fear of death is basically not so much fear of the unknown. Of course, there is the fear, a little bit of the unknown, like in the darkness you don't know what's there. So, but the main fear is that when I die, I won't be able to take the things which I love with me. Suppose somebody guarantees, oh, you're going to die tomorrow, but you can take your house, you can take your car, you can take your wife. What is the fear? The fear is that I have to let go of all this when I go. Right? And then once I fall, I'm not rising up. R.I.P. Rest in peace. Babaji used to say it also means rise if possible. You can't. Finished. So the fear is that I won't be able to enjoy what I have. That's the main fear. So, is it possible for us to live now as if we know for sure this is going to disappear? It's not going to continue. No, suppose that things are what is today may not be there tomorrow, which is a fact. Many people in Houston who never thought that they'll die. It's not in our hands. Many things. So, if you can live every day like that and lay to rest the self which was existing today when we go to sleep, and wake up in the morning as a new person, as a fresh person, then we have kind of solved the mystery of death. If this happens, then your question then becomes not only relevant, it also becomes possible for you to figure out roughly what could be happening after, because you begin to see what happens when you actually do it now. What I'm saying is, can we at this moment die to it? Dying is not just physical, right? So then you can explore then what comes after death, because you'll know how to go there, how to touch it. And it's not as if I'm saying something imaginary, it happens to everybody. Everybody is in some way dying and getting reborn. Now, practical sense of the term, one of the reasons why we like to cling is because of the past. We have in the past beautiful experiences, lovely experiences, which we like to cling to. Okay, I understand. But we also cling to the bad, terrible experiences that we have. Revenge, anger. Perhaps if you set the mind free from that, there's a possibility that you might go beyond this. I'll tell you an example. 20 years ago, Katyayani, she never does it, but gave me a hard slap. Okay? She didn't, I'm just saying. And how long does a slap actually last? How long does it last? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, one day? It was strong enough and the tooth fell off maybe for a few days till the dentist replaced it. But it's gone. It's over. But do we allow it to go? It goes on playing in our head like a tape recorder. She slapped me, oh, she slapped me. 20 years later, I must get back to her, you see. So it becomes a festering wound. If you really look at it, the slap is gone. It's only a tape playing, CD. Yes, she slapped me, she slapped me, she slapped me. I'm saying, when we go to sleep, can we open the window and say, Kartiyani slapped me, out? Shut the door to go to sleep. If we can practice this, and then you really know how to die. Because when death comes, somebody said, I think Solomon, somebody said, what is that? I forgot now. Oh, death, where is thy sting? Where will you sting now? And there is nothing to sting. So it's like that. Well, when I was very young, one day I was sitting outside the house and looking up, and I saw the clouds and the sky. And then I went to school and I was sitting in the classroom and looking out of the window and wondering, what the heck am I doing inside this? Studying to do what? It was wide open outside. There were some street kids playing out there, and here I'm sitting. So this tendency to break free is there in everybody at some point. You take a small little child and put him in the room, give him everything he needs. How long will he stay there? He will want to break the door and get out. So this is naturally there in all of us, to break free. Why? Because deep down in the subconscious we feel we are limited. We want to get out from this limitation. I think most people have this. My circumstances were not bad. They were quite good. Okay. It was a golden cage. But a cage is a cage. Golden, iron, copper, it's a cage. If you have birds in the house, don't invite me because I feel terrible. We shut them up and feed them, and the poor guys are sitting there. Of course, now you should let them go, they won't be able to survive. That's a different story. But sometimes I feel when nobody is looking, open the cage, they're longing to fly. I think we all have this tendency, which is why we rebel sometimes, do things which... I'm saying that this is actually the deep down feeling of the mind to be free, to leave its limitations and expand. And the less self-centered we are, the more it happens. I think so. And you don't, as I said in the beginning, you don't need to change your robes, your hairstyle, to do any such thing. Look at me. This is specifically the reason why Babaji told me to go and do this. My teacher, my master. He said, it's about time you be like everybody else and talk to them. Because usually when you are wearing something else and robes and things, people think we can't reach this. This is... And I'm saying that yes, it's possible. Why not? And if you think in my craziness I'm not doing any work, ask people who are traveling with me. I'm all the time doing something and doing it efficiently. I think when the mind expands, it also performs efficiently. It's not as if it becomes... we're talking about meditation, not about cannabis addicts. Well, maybe medically good, I don't know what. First place we went for a retreat was in Portland, and I believe there now cannabis is available everywhere. You can walk in and buy it. And somebody was very worried about this because her brother was was already an addict, and she said now there's no control. Nothing on pathology, I don't know.
Very mundane question about day-to-day practice. I was wondering, like, when I mean, it's not that I am a seasoned meditation, seasoned practitioner, but I mean, I run. I mean, we have so many things today, every day, like
Absolutely.
mind is always running here and there.
Yes.
But it is also true that when I sit down to meditate, then I feel like, oh, it is peaceful, and sometimes my mind is running and I'm thinking about 10 things, but sometimes I feel. But is it, my question is it because, do I find it peaceful because I have made my mind to think that I'm sitting in that same spot, I'm not allowing myself to think about, distractions? Is it because is it peaceful because of that I'm not allowing my mind to think? Or why is it? Like, I know it's probably self-explanatory, but I don't know if it makes sense.
Let me tell you something. Don't worry about the why, but do you feel peaceful when you sit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so leave it. Don't even worry why.
Another question, if I could. There's something I thought about too. And the really cool thing about us is we are hardwired to find effects in everything. So if we just go on our autopilot, we find this is that and that. This is, in order to find the good, you really have to quiet down. Okay. That's my explanation for why it's so. Why does it feel so good? If you just take a rest and just do. Well, not more than nothing. Meditation is more than nothing. I acknowledge that. But one of the most pleasant things, and I'm telling it's not the same thing, is to breathe. And you never realize that until you meditate. It's just, you don't notice that. It's so pleasant and wonderful, and you have it with you everywhere all the time. But what busy doing everything? It's so easy to.
I think you should become a guru now.
That's
Yeah, you're right.
just
You're
from
right.
a perspective of.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
understand.
I didn't mean to offend.
I understand.
Take over.
You're not offending.
Just from a mother's perspective and from somebody that's.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, like that was my question. Like, is it because I like it because it keeps me away from, the rest of
See, look, let's ask a basic question. Why do we meditate?
yeah, to be peaceful.
And then, why are you asking the question? So, it doesn't matter why, but if you are peaceful in your meditation, then you should do it. You don't, see, this is what happens. Even in a thing like meditation, we make our mind go round and round. When you can actually sit down quietly, we start speculating about it. Like, what's your name? I forgot.
Priyanka.
Huh?
Priyanka.
Like Priyanka said, you keep quiet, you don't do anything, and you feel you're nice and happy and peaceful. So why find even an explanation for that? Why don't we sit? And as we sit, it may become deeper. And I said, see, the problem is, this question, why this, that, is usually the mind itself playing a trick and taking you away from this meditation. So set that aside for some time. When you take off your shoes to come and sit, leave all that with the shoes and say, okay, stay here. I'm going to sit quiet. When I finish, I'll come and pick it up again. That's the most important thing to do. Yeah, it's true that when you are not doing anything which you are normally doing, when your mind is quiet and it's kind of at rest, because you are also sitting down. You're not walking around. There's one problem with fast food. It really doesn't digest because you're standing and eating. There is a physiological reason for this. When you're standing, a lot of blood is circulating down. When you sit down, you need not cross leg. When you sit down, then most of the circulation is in this area. So therefore your digestion also improves. In the same way, when you sit down, especially this way, because this shuts off the Ida and the Pingala, the two channels which are on the side. So therefore your mind or your energies are moving in the center, which is why people sit this way. Now today they call it Buddha pose. Why did Buddha sit this way? Normally nobody associates Buddha with yoga, but Buddha is sitting in the yogic pose. So I'm saying, keep doing it, improve, go deeper, till one day you open your eyes and tell Devanik, you and I are one. See?
Kind of what I was alluding to when I said, when you meditate, you go within yourself, so in a way try to become conscious of your mind. But I'm just curious if there is a level at which you do then become aware of somebody else's mind as well.
You do. In fact, this is why if you sit among people who are not meditators and meditate, it will be less deep than if you are sitting with a group of people who are already meditators. It improves. Why do you think people go to pray in a congregation? Because then everybody is in that attitude. Therefore it's kind of shared around. But eventually we should learn to do it independently by ourselves without depending on anybody else. If a person does that for a long time, then others who sit with that person will feel automatically meditative, because the energy is more.
So you mean to say you can only find peace by meditating?
What we were trying to discuss.
No, I'm just that, I've never meditated in my life, this is the first.
If you have not meditated all your life and if you have found peace, then there is no problem.
No,
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
But
just a question.
if you think that you need to meditate because you think that maybe there is even that much, a hypothesis, perhaps there is some kind of peace which I haven't seen, which I don't get normally, so then it's a good idea to meditate. I'm not saying all people should meditate. Meditation should not be an affair where you say you must meditate. It has to come by itself, naturally. You can't, because somebody is meditating, you don't have to meditate. You understand? There's no need to imitate
Sure, absolutely.
this process. And also meditation has many meanings. Meditation need not necessarily mean that you are sitting down with closed eyes. For some it is important, but when you are completely involved in doing what you love to do, there are no distractions, that is also a kind of meditation. You understand what I mean? Suppose you really love, the problem, distraction comes when you don't want to do something and you are being made to do it. If young children are asked to sit and meditate, they'll open one eye and see what's going on. They're not really going to do that. But if they are made interested in it for some reason, like listening to music or something like that, then they slowly develop a meditative state of mind. Also, when you do work with complete attention, which work you'll do only if you really love it, then you're already meditating. I want to tell you a story. You know that it's a popular teaching now, not now, for many years, called the Zen. The Zen Buddhists imported from Japan into India, but actually exported from India into Japan in the early days. So the great teacher Bodhidharma was considered to be the founder of Zen, went from the south of India to China. He didn't go to Japan, he went to China and he taught a particular brand of Buddhism. He was a Buddhist monk, Buddhism which laid great stress on one-pointedness and meditation. So he called it, his brand, the Dhyana Buddhism. Dhyan. In the Chinese language, Dhyan became Chan. Okay, Chan. And when Chan went to Japan, because of their gutter language, it became Zen. So Dhyana became Zen. But in India, generally, in many people, if you ask them to do Dhyan, they will say, Dhyan, kya hai, ye sab kya hai? If you say Zen, many people, because it is imported. You love imported things. So we have a saying that the jasmine in your own garden doesn't smell so good, in the neighbor's garden it smells good. So, so this is the history of Zen. And I'm not saying you shouldn't practice Zen. There are some good points in Zen, because they have managed to cut through all this unnecessary stuff and go straight to the fact. So what I'm saying was, when Bodhidharma was in China and he was living on the top of a hill, in those days there was no internet or Google Maps, and there no advertising. So two young people who really wanted to learn Zen, very serious and sincere guys, they, with great difficulty, they found him up there. So they had to walk through, and come. So the clothes were torn and the legs were paining them, walked many kilometers, many miles. They went up. So the great Bodhidharma was sitting there and drinking his soup with a wooden bowl and a spoon. So they went there and said, "Sir, we have come from far, we have suffered a lot. Please teach us Zen. Teach us how to attain Satori." Now, Satori is, in Zen terms, it means illumination or enlightenment. Like we say Nirvana in the Buddhists, and Moksha in Vedanta, and Kaivalya in Yoga, and so on. Satori. So the master was drinking his soup, so he said, "I'm drinking my soup." This guy waited for a few minutes and then said again, "Please teach us Zen, we've come from so far." He said, "I'm drinking my soup." Third time, when he said the same thing in reply, they got very upset. So he asked somebody and said, "Give them their soup." So they were also given wooden bowls with soup, and they were hungry, so they started drinking. Suddenly it occurred to them, what the hell, we came for Satori and we are drinking soup? I mean, this such a silly thing to do. So they stopped and they again asked him the question. Then he said again, "I'm drinking my soup." So they got upset, threw the thing down, and they said, "We are also drinking our soup." So then he said, he finished, so he put it away. He said, "Okay, you are not drinking your soup. You are drinking your soup and thinking of Zen. I am drinking my soup, I am drinking my soup, I am drinking my soup. This is Zen." You get what? So, when a person is doing something with complete attention, in India there is an airlines called Indigo. So on the door to the cabin, the cockpit where the pilots sit, there's a nice little notice which says, "Flying is a serious business, leave all your worries outside." Because you're carrying so many people also. So when you fly, give complete attention to flying. When you're driving, don't meditate. You know the dangers to yourself and to others. If you're driving with complete attention, you're meditating. Understand? So don't put meditation into some sort of a straitjacket and think meditation only means this. Yeah, it also means this, and it is essential sometimes, yes. And if you look, and once you go deep inside, actually there is no need to close your eyes. You close your eyes because you want to cut out everything for the time being. When you touch that and figure out that what is inside is also what is outside. There was a great teacher, a yogi in India called Ramana Maharishi. I don't know if you have heard. In the south. You cannot find a single picture of Ramana Maharshi with his eyes closed. They took some photographs, of course, in those days. Nowhere, because eyes are open, because he was not dependent on closing his eyes to go into meditation. Because once it happens, then even while you're active, everything is going on, it's there. But don't imitate and say that I will also not close my eyes. So first you close your eyes, then you can keep them open. Imitation is a dangerous thing. So what do you do?
I'm a physician.
What specialist in what?
Cardiology.
You're a cardiac physician, MD, or something else, whatever. And he is a surgeon out there. Surgeon, I said.
Interventionist.
Intervention. That is what?
That is like using catheters.
You don't actually cut open anybody. Oh, thank God. No, I mean.
He does everything that's supposed to be done without cutting open.
I
wanted to ask you a question.
Are you a doctor too?
Yeah.
What is your discipline?
I'm pulmonary, lung doctor in critical care.
That's lungs.
Yeah.
And yourself, sir?
I'm an attorney, a philosopher.
Attorney. Lawyer. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you something. It seems to me that our natural state, or most of what I notice, is to be self-centered.
Yeah.
How do we transcend that? I would like to, what I'm asking is there a way to just peel it off?
No.
Just throw it away?
No. There's no way it can be peeled off, but there are two ways of looking at it. The one is, it comes from the philosophical way of looking at it. The other is the psychological way. If we realize, it's a big if at some point in our life we realize that this self-centeredness that we have is not worth it, and we need to transcend it in some way, if we feel so. In fact, a little bit of transcending of selfishness is built in the system. Like the mother looks after the child. It's there, it's built in. The child is part of the mother, but still separate, right? But looking after your own child is, while it's a wonderful way of expressing yourself in a selfless way, it's no big deal, because monkeys also look after their kids. No big deal. But it is better than not looking after your child. So you have become better by doing that. Suppose a stage of mine comes when I also look after my neighbor's child, if the neighbor is willing, then I feel I have expanded a little more and moved out of my little center. And if we also realize in our minds that much of the problems in the world are because we are too self-centered, we can just leave it a little bit. Some things can be sorted out. So it's not a technique, there is no technique for it. The more you realize how self-centeredness in the end is really not so enjoyable, and that you need to expand, then that is the beginning of change. It has to be felt seriously and urgently. I think if any such thing, anything is felt urgently by the human individual, that human individual finds out ways and means to transcend it. And there can't be one means, because the mind is so complex, there must be many. This is what I think.
why would anybody have the urge not to be self-centered?
I think there are people who have been like that. There are in history, if you look, there have been people who have not been self-centered. We have stories of people like the stories of saints who were not even bothered about themselves when they wanted to do good to somebody. Now if it is there in them, I feel that in every human being there is a small spark of that. It's not been fanned yet and made into a flame, but there is a potential. In India we had have you heard of Father Damien, who went to work with the lepers because he felt so sorry for them, and in the middle of doing, he became a leper himself, but he didn't stop the work, he continued. So there is a tendency, there is somewhere in our system a part of the mind which sometimes even does things without caring for itself, which is breaking out of the center. So I think the potential is there, and I also think, this is my theory, that as we evolve and this world has to get better, then we need to move out of too much self-centeredness and grow a bit. Then it is possible that there is no other way. Now, some of the so-called spiritual people, now when I say spiritual people, the present circumstance is difficult to say because there are more number of gurus than disciples these days. So it's a very dangerous thing to say. But what I'm trying to say is that I forgot what I was going to say. Is there a solution for this? Any neurological solution? Can't be age. I'm 69, so there are people older than me. There have been genuinely spiritual people who have actually felt it within them that we are actually just a part of the whole, and that there is something all pervading which works through different centers, and therefore the center feels I am an individual. So there is that also on the other side. And therefore they say, please look into it and see, maybe it's true. The one thing about inquiry into anything, science, spiritual, anything, is before we inquire, it's a good idea not to draw conclusions and say, okay, let me look into this and figure out. Even if you suspend your judgment, it's okay, till I find out. So that's one thing that can take out barriers. Even in ordinary life, forget about spiritual matters. I see somebody who is a stranger, who may look different from me, who has a different color, or who has a certain posture, and I immediately can, oh, this is somebody different from me, I have to be careful. It happens. Why? Because we are human beings, like animals. There is a system of defense in us. The limbic system immediately starts wondering, what's this? But actually the guy may be a good guy. You don't know. So what happens, instead of looking into that, we react according to our first reaction. Then there is no communication. And when there is no communication, there is no togetherness. And togetherness is one of the elements of unselfishness. I'll give you an example. I have formed an image about you based on information, let's say. And you have formed some image about me based on some information, or what you know or what you have read. It's normal. Now when we say we are communicating, you and I, we are not communicating. That image you have about me and that image I have about you are communicating. There's no communication, real communication. Real communication is when I begin to question this and say, this is what I think, but it may be different. Then it begins slowly. I think so. Where
It seems like it's an attitude of always questioning.
you have or I have. Well, there's no harm in always questioning, but I think the greatest danger is people find answers very fast. And then they catch on to it and protect it and don't want it to break. You know? Yeah. So sometimes it's a good idea to question and hold the question and not immediately want an answer for it. You know, if you allow the question to sink, it's possible that it will bring out something. The other thing is, anything that has happened in this world, even in the physical world, has happened because somebody questioned. So don't, to say that put all your questioning mind in the freezer is not a good idea to evolve. People say that because they're afraid the question might be asked which they cannot answer. What's the harm in saying I don't know? Is there any harm? Now, I don't know is a difficult thing to say, especially when somebody is invested with full authority and say he knows everything or omniscient. Then that guy, not wanting to break his image, will never say I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know. We don't know. We can, look, if you don't know, then with the person who is asking the question, it's possible that you can investigate. So I think it's not such a bad idea. It's to have questions. More problems is to have too many answers which have not been proved.
It seems for me that in my meditation practice, I have no answers. I'm just questioning or looking,
And
observing.
but does that give you some kind of quietness of
Yeah.
mind? That's it.
But my problem happens when I get off the bench or the cushion. My problem is when I get off the bench.
Get off.
When I leave my meditation practice and enter into the world,
Uh,
I lose that, not that questioning, but that
that calmness,
Yeah, that space.
that tranquil, that space. Now, I think if you go on doing it, a time will come when you will still not lose it in the midst of this. But it needs,
more practice.
it's not as if it's a practice, it's more an attitude, let's say.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
I
That's a very good word.
Anyway, I was going to say something, you know. What's your name?
Priyanka.
There's one more Priyanka there. Okay. And you? Akriti. So you are born and brought up here, or you from Delhi? And yourself, so what's your name, you say?
Peter.
Huh?
Peter.
Peter. So you're an attorney. And you're a doctor. You said?
I'm Natarajan.
From,
I'm from India.
what do you do here?
I teach at Syracuse University.
Syracuse. Somebody, today I spoke to my wife and I said about Syracuse, and she said there's an excellent university there. I said, I don't know. What do you teach?
I teach in the business school.
Okay.
I teach management.
And yourself, sir, what's your name?
My name is David.
David. What do you do?
I teach.
Teach in the university? No?
I did teach at Syracuse, but not accredited course.
Mhm.
I teach yoga, actually.
Ah, very good.
I'm a student of yoga.
You also have some classes for people
Yes,
who are
there's
interested.
classes and students.
And you?
I am from India. Diary.
You are living here now? Or? Ah, your mother? Aunt. Okay.
Masi.
What's her name? Huh?
Raj.
Raj.
Rani.
Raj. Are you from Punjab?
In education department.
Punjab. That name is unusual in any other part of India.
Her name is new.
And what's your name?
Anshu.
Anshu. You're a doctor. And you, Avneet, what do you do?
I'm a doctor,
What doctor?
cardiologist,
Surgeon or physician?
physician.
And what do you do here?
I'm a doctor in training, cardiology.
Okay. And you what are you doing now?
Medicine.
Medicine.
I'm not cardiology.
Medicine. Who else is here? Yourself?
I'm Sita. I'm also a doctor, but I'm a psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. Okay. So you need to be a medical doctor to be a psychiatrist, right?
There was a time when I actually worked with a neurologist
Who?
in Chennai, actually.
Okay.
And he was trying to find the seat of spirituality. And
Do you know Ramachandran?
I don't
San Diego?
know him, but he actually gave a talk in that with that group.
Okay.
So I met him through that.
What is this psychiatrist's name in Chennai?
The neurologist?
As a neurologist?
His father is E.S. His name is E.S. Krishnamurti.
Okay.
And his father's name,
Is he still there?
they're
In
both
Chennai.
working still.
Okay.
They're both working. They used to work in, they were working in voluntary health services, VHS, in Chennai. And he would do these fancy MRI studies,
Fancy.
MRI studies to figure out what the seat of spirituality is.
You will never find it in the MRI.
They managed to publish a paper in epilepsy, people who
Ah.
had epilepsy and who had these spiritual,
Right,
experienced
right.
spiritual feelings.
It's quite, in a way, like
Yeah.
close.
Yes, yes. So they
All epileptics are not spiritual,
Right,
and
right.
all spiritual people are not epileptics, but
Yes.
there is a link.
Yes.
Some brain
Yeah.
condition is there. Yeah.
Yeah, so they actually published a paper in a very nice journal.
So I want to ask you a question, my question, not about anything else. Do you think that for epilepsy there is a treatment called transmagnetic stimulation? Have you in your experience seen it or seen it affect people?
I haven't used it for epilepsy, but we use it in depression.
Okay.
Primarily as a
Does it have some kind of an effect?
It does work very well for people who are depressed.
So which lobe do you use it in?
I haven't
You have.
personally used it. I've only seen it being effective on a couple of patients now.
So this is actually magnetic waves which are being thrown into a particular part of the brain
Yes.
at intermittent intervals, right? Intermittently.
Well, in the past, we still use it. We use electroconvulsive therapy.
But that is a very powerful thing, right?
Yes. So the TMS works on the same philosophy as ECT.
But it's not so severe as
It doesn't have the dramatic effects of
Oh.
ECT. They both are kind of similar, but it's just that ECT can be more dramatic, right? Like you're passing electric current through somebody's brain. Yeah. So TMS is a little different. My guess would be it is the if we go to the epilepsy literature, we say that if it's the right lobe, it's more mania, and the left lobe, it's more depression. So my guess would be it's the left hemisphere. That would be my guess. But I don't know if they
Yeah.
specifically.
No, I'm just. Since you said you're a psychiatrist, I was asking because I also have questions.
Yeah. But I was just thinking about what you mentioned about Zen, there is actually a modality of treatment we use in psychiatry called dialectical behavior therapy, where the first thing is mindfulness, which has been borrowed from Zen. And from India.
Yeah. Okay, so we call it an evening. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, old friends.